In this video, I'm going to review and show you how to use the Baby Brezza bottle sterilizer and dryer. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Dan and welcome to Parent Pacifier. On this channel, we help new and soon-to-be parents with tip videos and product reviews just like this one. So if you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you never miss a video. So in this review, I'm going to break down the primary features, what they do, and how it works, along with the pros and cons that I've experienced with it, and who I think it's best recommended for. So stick with me to the end. With that said, I have a quick question for you. What are the baby bottle cleaning products that you love or are consider buying? Let us know in the comments below. So this bottle sterilizer has three key features: sterilizing, drying, and storage. So you sterilize your bottles with steam using distilled water. There's a fan that's on the inside that dries your bottles, and you could keep your bottles stored with inside of this dome. It'll keep them clean and sterilized as long as they're inside there. Now it's important to note that this isn't a washer, so you do have to hand wash before you sterilize. It's not going to take out the grime from the inside. You want to make sure that you hand wash them first, then put them into this sterilizer. So to break down the parts, we have the lid. You have the accessory rack with both upper and lower posts. And we have the base, which has a stainless steel plate, your control panel, and the base itself. Underneath here, you actually have a filter that's replaceable too. Now, how to use it. First, you want to make sure that you've taken off your lid and your accessory rack. And on the inside, you have your stainless steel plate. That's where you're going to fill up distilled water. I've seen others that have used drinking water. You don't really want to use tap water. It will have a lot of buildup at the bottom because it heats up and steams up. So it's best to use distilled water. You'll want to fill up about 4 ounces of water. We use this glass Pyrex to fill up the 4 ounces. Or you could just fill it up here by eye. There's a little marker on the inside. You'll want it to go over the white level. So as I pour in this water, you'll see it fills up and will hit its mark. You want to get it just below where the fan is. Now it's important to note that you do not want any water to hit that fan. So if you poured some water in there and then you're actually not ready to steam and you want to pour that water out, what you'll want to do is make sure you tip the base in the opposite direction of the fan. Now there's actually a little symbol over here that's hard to see on video, but you'll be able to see this in person. You want to make sure you're tipping it to the left as you pour it out into the sink. Now that you've put the distilled water inside there, you can put your accessory rack back on top. And then fill it with your bottles. We fill it with Dr. Brown's. It fits perfectly in there, the narrow Dr. Brown's bottles, but we also fit Advent bottles. We fit Munchkin latch bottles inside of there. We fit wide neck bottles inside of there. It fits every size bottle that we've been able to put in there. So no matter what bottle you have, it's likely going to fill all 6 slots for your bottles. For Dr. Brown's, you have these little vent inserts, or whatever bottle that you have, it has little accessories like this. You could place those right inside the lower posts. They'll get steam down there. And in the upper posts, you could put your bottle's nipples. You could even put pacifiers. I found that the vent tubes for Dr. Brown's fit perfectly in the little holes provided in the upper posts. Now, if you're at the point where you're feeding your baby by spoon, you could also fit little spoons, like these Munchkin spoons can fit right into these hole slots right at the top if you want to steam them. And then the nipple tops and rings can fit right up here. Now, once you have your bottles and your nipples and everything else that you want to steam, you could just cover it with the lid. Now, if you've overfilled it, it might be a little hard to get that lid on. We don't like to overfill it just because it just gets difficult to get that lid on, and then you don't know what's getting steamed and what's not, and what might not actually dry because there's way too much stuff in there. So fill it to capacity, or don't fill it to capacity. You don't have to fill every single slot. You could just fill a couple of slots. Now you have a couple of options to turn it on. First thing you want to do is hit the power button, and you'll see the light show up. It'll just be zeros across the board. Now, you could either only dry, so let's say you've cleaned your bottles and you just want to have them dried, you could just dry them in here without putting any water. Or you could only sterilize, which means you'll just sterilize them with water, but they won't get dried. That will leave some condensation on the bottles, which you may want to at some point just dry it. So I'm not exactly sure why you would want to just sterilize and not dry, but that is an option for you. Or what I use every single time is hitting both the sterilize and dry option, and you could hit that right here below the power button. Once you've hit that button, it gives you 3 drying time options: 45 minutes, which is the first option, 60 minutes, which is the second option, and 30 minutes, which is the third option. This is how many minutes it'll take to dry your bottles after they've been sterilized. The sterilizing will always take the same amount of time. It's however long it takes to steam off all the water that's in there. You'll see once it starts, it'll start to count up. Once it stops steaming, the timer will turn to 30 or 45 or 60, whatever you've chosen, and the timer will start to count backwards down to 0, and that's how you'll know how much longer you have for your bottles to be fully dried. Now, I've found that 30 minutes is perfectly doable. I have not had to use 60 or 45. I would assume that's if you've overloaded it a lot and you have a lot of bottles and accessories inside of there. You may want to do 45. Occasionally, we've seen a little bit of condensation still left at the very tip of a nipple or two, but for the most part, it's completely dry and the bottles are ready to go once it's finished. Now, hey, that reminds me real quick, just so you know, this review is part of a baby bottle series, and you can check that in the YouTube card above or in the description below. But let's jump back into the review. Now, once your bottles are done, you could take the lid off or leave the lid on. A good tactic at the end of the night, if you've cleaned your bottles and you want to have nice sterilized bottles for the morning, after you've put your baby down to sleep, put your bottles in here to sterilize and just let it go. Leave it inside of there overnight. The lid will keep from any dust or germs landing on there, so it'll stay sterilized. And you could just use this as a storage device. We've used the dry rack grass, and sometimes that gets overfilled with the amount of bottles that we have. So you could just leave some bottles right in here, and that's also added storage. Now, one thing that does happen is the stainless steel plate will get some buildup. It'll especially happen if you use tap water. That's why it says to use distilled water. But even with distilled water, you get this little layer of buildup that happens on the stainless steel, even with distilled water, that you can occasionally clean out. You don't have to do it after every single time, but after a couple of uses, after a week or so, you might want to go and clean that out. So the best way we've learned to clean that, as with so many other baby products, white vinegar. You could get a cheap large gallon of vinegar, and you will take the lid off and take your accessory rack off, and inside here pour a little bit of vinegar, enough to cover the surface of the stainless steel plate, and let that sit there for 10 to 15 minutes or so. Then take a paper towel and just clean out the inside of the stainless steel plate. It should quickly and easily take off a lot of that buildup. It might not be perfect, but it's enough to clean it up and get a lot of that buildup off. So we've been using this for about 6 months now, and we've experienced some pros and some cons. So some things that make the Baby Brezza difficult are that it's a little bulky. So you can see in our apartment, it takes up a lot of valuable space on our countertop. It doesn't fit under our cabinets, so when we want to steam bottles, we have to put it up here and then put it away to store for a little bit until we need it again. So it does take up a lot of room if you don't have much space. And it's also hard to store because you got to find a space that's big enough to fit this. That's just one thing that I think makes it a little difficult. But the things that we love about it are that it's fairly quick to use. I mean, 30 minutes to steam and dry is pretty quick. And it really dries well. So it's not often that there's a lot of condensation left at all. In fact, the bottles are usually bone dry, which is great because we know that they've been completely dried and they're completely clean. And you could fit up to 6 bottles in here and a whole lot of accessories, including pacifiers or whatever else that you could fit in there that is okay to go into a dryer. And the storage factor, so that you could leave your bottles in there and it's not going to be affected by the germs that are in the air. Like at the current time of making this video, it's flu season and there could be a lot of germs floating around the air and you don't want that landing on your newborn's bottle. So keeping it inside of there ensures that the airborne germs won't land on it, especially after going through the effort of sterilizing them after cleaning. So we would absolutely recommend the sterilizer for parents of newborns, parents with multiple kids that are using bottles, because you got to clean those so often that you could just throw 6 in here, boom, you got 6 ready to go, take those out and you could throw in another 6. Now you've got 12 done and ready to go. So it's definitely good for families with multiple kids or even just with one. If you have a lot of bottles or even if you have a few, it's easy to clean. And it just gives new parents like us peace of mind that our bottles are sterilized. So if you just need peace of mind, this is a great option to get. Check out the links below for the most recent price of the sterilizer along with anything else that was in this video. And if you've liked what you saw here, don't forget to hit that round subscribe button and try one of these selections. Thanks for watching and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.